Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site, bettingangle.us, a free site. Today is June 22nd, 2023. Let's talk 140. Let's talk about fight styles. Let's talk about a huge opening. Let's even name the fighter who might surprise some people at 140. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, if you haven't seen it already, the Regis Prograis versus Danielito Zorrilla, and Zorrilla was a last-minute replacement fight, is one of the most important fights at 140 for some time. Right, folks, I'm just here to tell you, and I know it's been reported differently. I understand. 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards had wide margins on it. I'm just here to tell you that Regis Prograis looked terrible in the fight. More importantly, he looked to have a weakness that, quite frankly, a certain fight style might be able to deal with. Right now, let's freeze the frame right here, and let's just ask a basic question. Who looked better against Teofimo Lopez? Was it Josh Taylor, who just lost? I thought the second half of the fight is a victory lap for Teofimo Lopez. Or was it mover, lateral mover, back foot, behind the jab, southpaw, Sandor Martin, who knocks down Lopez in that fight, who loses a split decision to Lopez? I would argue that Sandor Martin looked a lot better against Teofimo Lopez, who's now one of the masters at 140, than did Josh Taylor. Well, understand, Regis Prograis, in this fight against Danielito Zorrilla, looks out of his depth. And I'm a Regis Prograis fan, but he looked out of his depth with Zorrilla's foot speed. Now, I'm not saying this is a great fight to watch. Zorrilla, quite frankly, doesn't mount enough offense to take the title. But let me just say it's a close fight, and the reason it's close is because Regis Prograis, and it's surprising to me, has very little ring coverage. In other words, Zorrilla is moving backwards at will, and Prograis can't even cut off the ring on him. Right? Understand, too, Prograis starts to get desperate to the point where, folks, he gets dropped in the fight. The referee missed it. I encourage you to look at the film. Prograis gets hit with a right hand in the first round and goes down. He's unprepared for the fact that Zorrilla, unlike Prograis, has ring coverage, is able to move from distance and deliver punches, right? In other words, when I say ring coverage, I'm talking about the ability to hit a guy who's far away from you. Think Deontay Wilder. Now, Prograis is a master in the pocket. We saw that against Jose Zepeda. Prograis can hold his own in the pocket. The problem's outside the pocket. Someone with movement who can dictate the fight behind a jab is going to have Prograis running into the jab. Prograis won't be able to get past it. In other words, going into this fight, just what I learned. Prograis came across to me like Joe Frazier did. Right? Very tough guy, hard to avoid. He's going to fight 3 minutes of every round. You know, this is the ongoing nuisance, no rounds off. You're dealing with heavy punching power. When the guy comes in and throws, he's going to throw a lot of punches. Prograis is not Joe Frazier. Prograis, a southpaw, right, just doesn't have the ring coverage. You remember that Joe Louis line. And Louis, by the way, also wasn't blessed with fast feet. Joe Louis was asked about Billy Conn, and Joe Louis said he can run, but he can't hide. Right? Well, I'm just here to tell you that you can hide on Regis Prograis. I know this is not the way it's being reported. Just understand that, these judges aren't the only ones overly impressed with a fighter's reputation. Fight fans are too. A promoter has very little incentive to say, hey, my star fighter didn't look that good, did he? Right? Promoters promote the big names, right? They don't want to say that the big name didn't deliver. Well, folks, Regis Prograis not only didn't deliver against Zorrilla, and again, I'm not saying the fight's that good, I'm just saying it's a revelation. He throws several right-handed jabs that miss by about a foot. In other words, Zorrilla is moving backwards and Prograis can't just run after him and close the distance. Right? Prograis is kept outside. His big moment is in the third round when he drops Zorrilla off a very good left hand. Again, he's a southpaw. But just understand, Zorrilla gets off the canvas, you thought, okay, well, Zorrilla now is just red meat. Prograis is just going to run after him and hit him, right? He knows he can drop him now. And that doesn't happen. Prograis is kept outside. Now, the reason this matters, and it matters quite a bit, is because Sandor Martin can stay outside and can throw more offense than Zorrilla did here. In other words, you were watching the fight and you thought, what a shame Zorrilla's not throwing more volume. Because if he was, Prograis would be in trouble. Right? As it was, I thought it was a close fight. Well, Sandor Martin now has the benefit of looking at this film. He can come in and throw more volume. He also knows that with his foot speed, Prograis is going to have a hard time catching up to him. Worse yet, he knows that if Prograis gets desperate, like Prograis does in the first round of this fight, Prograis' defense degrades. I'm telling you, Prograis gets dropped here. The ref didn't call it a drop. Who cares what the ref called it? You're looking at the fight. You see Prograis get hit. You see Prograis go down. I know all of these fighters want to look like every knockdown of them's a flash knockdown. Every knockdown of them is a slip. Folks, it's not a slip. This is 2023. We have instant replay. You can actually rewind videos here on YouTube. Prograis got hit, Prograis got dropped. What happens if Prograis is frustrated trying to catch up with a mobile backfoot Sandor Martin and then walks into something like Teofimo Lopez did? Right? Understand too, Sandor Martin is a guy who already beat Mikey Garcia. Right? This isn't a guy who shows up, has the fight of his life against Teofimo Lopez, and we're saying, oh my God, that fight could have been awarded him. No, this is a guy who's had more than one good night against high-level opposition. Let's make this conversation interesting. 135. You might recall a southpaw, Lomachenko. I thought he lost the fight. But you might recall Lomachenko throwing a lot of great straight left hands against Devin Haney, right? Who, in my opinion, has some of the best legs in the sport. But understand, that fight is an optical illusion. because Lomachenko also has some of the best legs in the sport. In other words, you really can't hide from Devin Haney or Lomachenko. They couldn't hide from each other. Right? Devin Haney starts to go back. Guess what? Loma is coming forward. Right? Great leg speed will nullify great leg speed. Right? Well, what happens? And this is a big question we need to ask. Because Devin Haney right now is the undisputed champion at 135, but he's too big for the division. You saw that at the weigh-in, where you're looking at his body and you're saying, my goodness, even by boxing standards, this guy has no fat on him. Right? You see Devin Haney at that weigh-in and you're thinking, man, this has me wanting a glass of water. This guy looks so thirsty, making weight, that you're thinking, my goodness, there's no way this guy's going to do so again. And of course, in the fight against Lomachenko, Devin Haney is forced to go the distance. Right? That fight hung in the balance, quite frankly, until the later rounds. Well, what happens if Devin Haney, who you didn't see it in the Loma fight because of the foot speed offsetting, right? But you would see it if he were to fight Regis Prograis. Right? Devin Haney would have access to an entire back foot game. He has access now to the Zorrilla film. We all do. And he would think to himself, you know what? I can be on my back foot. And even though Regis is a southpaw, like Loma was, and even though Regis, higher weight class, plus Regis is a puncher. Loma isn't a puncher. Right? Regis hurts you with his shots. If Regis were to land what Loma landed, Devin Haney would be in a lot more trouble. But the question is, would Regis be able to move with Devin Haney to land those straight left hands? In other words, would Regis be able to establish a pocket against Devin Haney? Folks, he might not. In other words, the fight's an easy fight to sell, right? They could splice together some of Loma's straight left hands, and then they could say, wow, Regis is a left-handed guy. Regis is a southpaw. Right? How could Devin Haney jump to the weight class above 135 and deal with straight lefts from a bigger puncher, a heavier, bigger puncher? And the answer is what Ali would say. Right? How do you deal with Liston's punching power? Well, you don't allow him to hit you with the punches. Right? Devin Haney could be on his back foot. Zorrilla's a righty. Devin Haney would be a righty. We know from the first round when Regis has to get up off the canvas, right? He looks cool doing it. The point, though, is he got put on the canvas. We know that Regis has recent memories of trying to jump in on a righty, getting caught, going down. Right? Understand how ridiculous that scene is. Regis gets hit, it's only because Regis, going down, tries to grab Zorrilla. That Zorrilla falls to the canvas with him. The referee, confused, called it a slip. Folks, that's a slip caused by a punch. That's a knockdown. The fact that Regis reaches out and tries to grab Zorrilla, in fact does grab Zorrilla, and pulls Zorrilla to the canvas with him, doesn't negate the fact that it's Regis who got hit. It's Regis who lost his balance because he got hit. Right? If I'm Devin Haney and I'm thinking, who do I want to fight? Shakur Stevenson, that's a dangerous fight. Shakur is a skilled southpaw and he's fast. Right? He's fast. He's an athlete. Right? I would argue that since I'm forgetting the guy's name, why don't I just move on from it? But let's just say at 135, Devin Haney has to ask himself whether he wants to give Loma a rematch, whether he wants to fight Shakur Stevenson, right? Or whether he, quite frankly, wants to go up to 140 because it might be better for his legacy. Understand, he's already undisputed at 135. The argument would be, I conquered 135. If he goes up to 140 and beats Regis Prograis, who doesn't have the foot speed to match him, right? He wouldn't fight the fight that Zepeda fought. He would be moving. If he beats Prograis, he then becomes champion in a different weight class. He can then work on being Terrence Crawford, right? He would have a share of the belt at 140, then he could work on trying to be undisputed in a second weight class. Right? That's more impressive. Let me say this about Gervonta Davis. Right? You know, I understand Gervonta Davis insisted on a weight clause and a rehydration clause in his fight against Ryan Garcia. Right? Ryan Garcia wasn't the title holder. Right? Any such conversation about rehydration clause and stuff like that with Devin Haney should be shot down by the Haney folks. The argument would be, look, Gervonta, didn't you fight for a title at 140? Right? Look up the weight of his fight against Mario Barrios. Right? The fact that Gervonta Davis is asking for weight clauses below 140 is fraudulent when the guy's already fought at 140. And so, if I'm Devin Haney, understanding that Gervonta Davis is the cash cow at 135, I would say, look, Gervonta, I'll fight you. But player, I'm going to have dessert. Right? I'm going to have some extra calories. I'm not fighting you at 135. I was undisputed at 135. Been there, done that. Do you want this paycheck or not? I would move up to 140. Now let's be clear here. You heard me say that I don't believe that Regis Prograis has ring coverage to deal with very slick guys on their back foot. Right? I do believe that Ramirez, who lost his title to Josh Taylor, has the foot speed. Right? I believe Ramirez could hunt down a Danielito Zorrilla, right? Or a Devin Haney. I believe Ramirez, bigger guy, ferocity, confident on his front foot, is going to force you to try to catch him as he's coming inside. But that's not Regis Prograis, right? Prograis is a master technician. Understand, I feel, he might be the best at 140, but not against a mover. Right? Boxing, I believe, is rock, paper, scissors. I can say, wow, in a round robin, this guy would do well, but he loses to movers. I believe Prograis would be vulnerable against Sandor Martin, a guy who gave Teofimo one of his toughest fights. Cambrosis beat him. Right? Sandor Martin knocked down Teofimo Lopez. Just understand, Sandor Martin, in my opinion, would give Regis Prograis all he could handle. I believe Devin Haney, if he shows up and decides he's not going to stick around the pocket. He's actually going to move. He's going to use his length, right? Haney's a tall guy. He's going to use his length, and since he's not fighting Loma, he might actually be able to create a cushion between himself and the opponent. I think Devin Haney at 140 would give Regis Prograis a lot of problems. Right? So this Zorrilla Prograis fight is an eye-opener. Styles make fights. Prograis lacks ring coverage. You don't want to get hit by Prograis up close. The key in fighting him is to not be up close, to use movement, to keep Prograis lifting his feet, to keep Prograis following you around like a puppy, which is how he looked against Zorrilla. One judge had this fight close. That's the fight I saw. I have the highlights in my favorites folder here on YouTube. Give them a look. 140, folks, has opened up a bit. Sandor Martin might not be on the tips of people's tongues at 140. Just ask yourself, who has given Teofimo Lopez a tougher fight recently? Just ask yourself, why are we overlooking his win over Mikey Garcia, a 3-division champion? Right? Let's remember, I know people are going to say, well, Mikey lost to Errol Spence. That was at 147. That's how good Mikey is. By the way, Mikey goes the distance against Errol Spence. Right? So Sandor Martin is beating big names. He's a mover. After this Zorrilla fight, are you sure that Regis Prograis can cut off the ring on Sandor Martin? I'm not. Are you sure that Regis Prograis can cut off the ring on Devin Haney? And understand, when a guy moves up in weight, that might affect his mobility. But let's just say, I'm not sure he can. Right? The key in fighting Prograis, again a southpaw, is to jab him and to move to his right, away from his left hand. Force Prograis to reach with the left hand. Zorrilla, last-minute replacement, just went the distance with him and did not get caught with too many left hands. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.